Friends, in my rabbinical career, there are certain parts of the Torah I try to avoid at all cost. And so I've been thinking about it. I'm not going to give you all the details about my rabbinical career. It's pretty boring. But this portion, this specific section that I'm talking about, I don't believe I've ever spoken about because I never knew what to do with it. So I'm going to try to do something with it tonight. And if I succeed, don't say anything. If I fail, really don't say anything. Okay. So here's a crazy story. One of the strangest stories in the Torah is the story of Bilam and his donkey. Bilam is a renowned pagan soothsayer, and he has the power to curse others. And the king of Moab called upon him to curse the Israelites because the Israelites scared him. Balak, the king of Moab, was terrified of Israel, and the king sends emissaries to Bilam and says to him, "Work for me." But God disapproves of Bilam's cursing Israel. Undeterred, the king sends more emissaries. But Bilam interrupts, saying, if God doesn't will it, even if if the king gave me a palace of gold and silver, he couldn't curse his people. He can only do what God tells him to do. And eventually God tells Bilam to leave with emissaries the next day, although God is not really happy about it. Bilam saddles his ass, his donkey, and begins his journey. You can see, this story never did anything for me. Donkeys, Bilam, I don't get it. Okay, but hold on a second. So Bilam saddles his ass and begins the journey. And on the way, the ass sees the angel of God standing with a drawn sword in his hand and swerves away from the road to avoid it. And Bilam can't see it. And Bilam beats the ass and tries to turn it back on the road. And 2 more times the angel stands so that the ass moves to avoid it. And each time Bilam beats the ass, beats the donkey. Finally, God gives the ass the ability to speak to Bilam. And the ass, so the only intelligent person in this whole story is a donkey. You're getting it. It's crazy. So the ass declares that she has never taken him off the road in all the times that she served him before this day. So why is he beating her? And here is a line that interests me most. Then God uncovered Bilam's eyes to reveal the angel with a drawn sword. It's interesting. The angel of God tells Bilam that he appeared because he doesn't approve that Bilam was going to curse the Israelites, and that the angel was there to protect Bilam from death. So Bilam admits that he didn't know that the angel was standing in the way and offers to turn back from the journey. But God says, continue, but you must only say what I tell you to say. It's a kind of crazy story where the donkey sees the presence of God and Bilam can't. So as I went through this portion, and I have avoided it for 42 years, this is a line that really interests me because it's quite fascinating. Because Bilam says, I erred because I didn't know that you were standing in my way. This is how I understand what Bilam is saying. He's saying, I didn't know that you were the force behind all that was happening to me. I didn't know that behind the scenes you're guiding things. In other words, once his eyes were open, he recognized there's God in the world and God is making things happen. But before that, only the donkey could understand it. So I started thinking about this story. And it's an incredible, important story that I shouldn't have been avoiding for 42 years. The biblical encounter here between Bilam and his donkey and this angel that appears focuses on something that we as religious people are always struggling with. Even when we don't see God, does a belief in God mean that God is in charge and we don't notice? Let me repeat that. Even when we do not see God, does a belief in God mean that God is in charge and we don't even notice it? And Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh, is filled with ideas that God is in charge. I'll give you a couple examples. It says in the book of Proverbs, it says, the heart of man plans his ways, but the Lord establishes his steps. God is guarding the way, not us. The book of Psalms says, oh, God is in the heavens. He does all that he pleases. In other words, God in the end controls everything. And of course, you go to Christianity and you see in Ephesians 1, God's works all things according to the counsel of his will. Now, this idea is pretty prominent in much of Judaism. For example, the Ramban, a great medieval sage, scholar, interpreter of the Torah, says something like this. He says, from the overt major miracles, man comes to the realization of the hidden miracles, which are the foundation of the Torah. He says, nothing's by accident, everything is a miracle. For a person has no portion in the Torah of our teacher Moses unless he believes that all matters and circumstances are miraculous, that they do not follow the nature of the general course of the world. This is true regardless the nation and the individual. In other words, the world isn't going to its natural course according to Ramban. God is controlling it. God is guarding it. And every moment is a miracle because God controls it. So according to the Ramban, I'm getting somewhere important, so don't leave me yet. So according to Ramban, a person who denies that God directs everything miraculously is a heretic. And there are no rules of nature or coincidence. Everything, according to him, is a miracle. And every time I drop a rock and it falls, that is not gravity, but a miracle. So what does that have to do with anything? Rambam's approach is one that many accept. And I want to talk about President Trump for a moment. Don't say oi. He's got something to teach us, or something maybe not to teach us. This has nothing to do with politics. Trust me. We're not going to lose our tax-exempt status because I'm talking about Trump. I'm not telling you to vote for Trump or don't vote for Trump. I do care, but I'm not going to say. Now, we're talking about religion. Now, unfortunately, President Trump was shot at with the intention of killing him last Shabbat. And this was a horrific event. The theological reaction of President Trump is noteworthy, though. And I've been tracking this all week. I even made sure that I saw most of President Trump's address last night because I wanted to make sure that I had a full picture of what he has been saying about this topic. After the terrible assassination attempt, Trump posted on his social network, Truth Social, that, quote, it was God alone who prevented the unthinkable from happening. We will fear not, but instead remain resilient in our faith and defiant in the faces of wickedness. Trump has given this event religious meaning for himself. He told in the New York Post newspaper, by luck or by God, many people are saying it's by God, I'm still here. And then last night, in his comments, these are two comments that I gleaned from it. He said, he was describing, and I really didn't like what he was doing there with a picture of his bleeding face, but that's besides the point. There was blood pouring everywhere, and yet in a certain way I felt very safe because I had God on my side. I felt that. So God was on his side. In another spot he says, I'm not supposed to be here tonight, not supposed to be here. Then the crowd starts chanting, yes, you are. And then he says, thank you, but I am not. And I'll tell you, I stand before you in the arena only by the grace of the Almighty God. And then Franklin Graham, the son of the evangelical preacher Billy Graham, and Franklin Graham is no Billy Graham. He said, Trump came very close to having his brain spread over the platform, but God, I believe, protected him. And Graham said he hoped the attempted assassination was a wake-up call for Trump, that the Bible is clear that all authority is given from God. I think I'm doing pretty well here. Trump's family has taken to social media in recent days a claim that the involvement of a higher power with his son, and with his son Eric calling it nothing short of divine intervention. Trump's second wife, Marla Maples, shared an illustration of Trump at a lectern overseen by a blonde archangel. This far-right, I'm going to keep doing this, the far-right podcaster, I can't even pronounce his name, said that there's a sign from God because the bullet was shot at 6:11 p.m., and there's a reference in Ephesians 6:11, which calls on believers to put on the full armor of God and stand against the devil's schemes. That's good proof of God's presence. Okay, so what am I getting at? Here's my theological reaction. This theology that's getting flown around and being expressed is incredibly troubling. In my opinion, it's obscene. And we need to put it to bed. And I'm not here to question President Trump's his evolution of his faith. I don't judge people's faith, and I take him at their word. And if it's something else, I'm just taking him at his word about what he's thinking or what he's feeling. That's what I'm doing. I can't do an MRI of his soul. Do we have so much chutzpah to believe that we mortals can discern God's actions? And it doesn't matter which religion proclaims that. Now, there is this man, Corey Comparatore, the resident for Butler, who was fatally shot. And the Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania spoke very eloquently about this man who was a firefighter and a church-going man and someone who was extremely supportive of our former President Trump and who loved his family. And as we know, when the bullets flew, he went over his family and protected him. So what's the meaning of his death? He was clearly a public servant and a God-fearing man. He leaves a family and a child and a family behind. Did God decide not to protect him? Is there meaning in his death? And what is it? I don't find meaning in a father getting killed protecting his family and thinking God has some reason for this. Can we stop trying to find meaning in things that have no meaning? So here is Londi Theology 101. It's not a great treatise, but here it is. Our relationship to God is not about magic or miracles or divine control. It's not about a God who is the pilot who directs everything. It's not about wondering the hidden message behind our visible reality. That idea, to me, makes a mockery of religion. And I know that I'm speaking against a lot of classical theology, but I don't care because that theology just doesn't do anything for me anymore. When people get up and start saying that they are so clear how God is working through their life or not working through their life, or they can identify God's path in the world and because they're certain of it, I say to them, you've made God into an idol. You don't know anything about God. You're a human being. How do we think as human beings we know something about something that is the creator of the world? What chutzpah do we have? And if it's broken, why say it anymore? How would I respond if I was President Trump's spiritual leader? Can you get me that job? This is what I would say to him. I would say, President Trump, are you okay? First, I'm thankful that the assassin's bullet didn't succeed. And second, there are evil people in the world who do things for a reason or no reason, and they decide to do evil. God doesn't decide. And third, we can't control what happens, and I don't think God is capricious, protecting one person over another. And finally, what does it mean to believe in God after all? It can't be just blind submission. That doesn't make any sense. This is what I would say to him. I'd say, what is belief in God? It's taking what happens to us and finding meaning in it. It's taking something and having it open our eyes to the preciousness of life. That's what happens to Bilam. He opens his eyes and is able to see something he wasn't able to see before. Opening your eyes to God is to see new dimensions of our existence. It calls upon us to use our time that we have in a good way. President Trump, you escaped death. It was random. God is not a magician or a wizard of Oz or looking out for you more than anyone else. You're a lucky man. You live because the world is random. Your assassin missed because his skills were not sufficient to carry out his evil intent. Yet God is real. God is the power in the world that enables us to transcend ourselves, to rise from our selfishness into a realization that we are in the hands of God. We are the hands of God in this world to make it better, just, righteous, and good. We don't know why things happen, but we do know what we must respond to when something does happen. So my expression to President Trump would be, ask not what your God can do for you, ask what you can do for your God. Shabbat Shalom.